Originally, this video was going to be about impossible dreams of games, ones that were either impossible to create or ones that would demand more effort to create than the actual payoff. But one game kept creeping at the sides of my mind, gnawing at my head. Birthright was originally created by TSR in 1995, and the basic premise was that the world was filled with literal divine right rulers, and you just happened to have enough to claim a title. Being a magical hero king was an established fact of life, but you were also responsible for all the usual issues of being the divinely appointed hero king, as well as being the divinely appointed hero of a D&D fantasy world. Though my history with the game isn't really the campaign setting, it was the strategy RPG game called Gorgon's Alliance that I think sparked my undying love of 4X and RPG hybrids, something that haunts me to this day. In my own writing, birthrightisms show up more than I'd like to admit, be it from BCS's system to its predecessor The Song of Ice and Fire, Slaves of Chaos being a literal 4X TRPG, or just any time domain play gets brought up. I've seen other games attempt to emulate this game, attempt to be like it, but it usually feels more comfortable in either its adventuring side or its ruler side without having the mix of both and that gravitas of Birthright's rulership. I call this the impossible dream because Birthright is such a time, place, and a concept kind of game. I have yet to encounter a video game like Gorgon's Alliance that helped me discover Brigandine. Most attempts seem to falter at the integration of the domains and the heroics, neither taking priority or wanting to work together smoothly or being an endgame level content, so it sat in a mental shed for a while, picking up dust. That is, ironically, until the Orc City meme cropped up. While it isn't easy being green, it sparked a lot of thoughts about the nature of perspective. What does the orc standard look like? What does the elf standard look like? What is an Orc City? What is an elf city? And those thoughts made me drift back to unlocking that shed to see a few dusty thoughts. How does one make Birthright? Well, the notepad version anyway, because it's me, of course. Perhaps you'll let me muse about this little impossible dream for a few minutes. The concept of divinely appointed hero kings is interesting, but what I like about the setting is less the divine and more about the hero king aspect. Let's imagine our set of base characters. We need to keep the system actually pretty simple for each of them, but our heroes are already above average, even among their adventuring peers. Those peers being able to be hired on or added to a retinue system, a standard PC-like character that the hero kings can recruit to adventure in their stead. So if we have an elf paladin, a human wizard, and a dwarf warrior, all of them becoming hero kings unto themselves, the elf paladin may decide not to go adventuring at all and send some adventurer they have on payroll in their stead. This would also let for some West Marches stuff, but I digress. But that does lead me into one thing I actually really like about Gorgon's Alliance. Being a dwarf meant you had a dwarf society to manage. Elves had elven societies, and so on. The campaign books actually expand on these a little bit, with the different classes each having their own way of approaching building their domain up. I like this a lot, being able to mold a society. What does a paladin's Templar LARP look like? What does the wizard kingdom look like? God forbid we look at the dwarven mountain home. Though I'd probably need to mug Rain for some of its mechanics in here though. The actual domain play elements would probably need to be fairly abstracted out, probably relying on a few core systems from video rather than the table. If anything, I'd probably be stealing bits from things like Shadows of the Forbidden Gods, where heroes and rulers can assign themselves to a location to try and help it out. It'd also allow for a more comfortable place for agents in the stable as well, though the hard part here is making it feel like your domain, that malevolent windmill in this quest. My immediate thoughts actually default to things like EU4, improving larger aspects on a broader scale, but being able to micromanage certain improvements with your own coffers. Going to raid an ancient temple for loot isn't to buy a new sword, but to improve your castle and build a new library. We need some larger scale domain terms. We could probably sub out the concept of an adventuring day with these domain turns though with all these different society options, this could get pretty overwhelming if I don't do a lot of legwork in it. Overall though, the system would need to be simpler than it would appear. The goal would be a fast character creation and fast resolution and such, But why? Because it's on such a macro scale that the micro needs to be a lot more precise and a lot faster. We don't need to know the Hero King of Awesome Tony has a +3 to his woodworking skill. We know he has industry +3. The macro and micro elements need to work together here without turning the entire game into a spreadsheet simulator or ignoring one aspect. Now, the hard part here, that overwhelming feeling of dreads, is actually the players. Micro aspects may appeal to some, macro elements may appeal to others. Of a 5-man group, what happens when 2 want to be kings and 3 want to be heroes? The easy idea is just keeping the kings and adventurers and everyone else using the same attributes and skills. So if King Hero Man is the ruler of a nation, he's taking on the responsibility of more macro elements, but he'd also be letting the halfling rogue be his spy master to handle the micro elements that may come up. Both players are satisfied? Maybe? Hopefully. Though this is also making me think of something like a Crusader King stat system or something a little bit more All of the conceptual ideas behind this game are there, trying to weld all those ideas together for a bespoke system about what I remember about Birthright and the best parts of the Border Princes. But simple ideas tend to have the worst time being stapled together. Scaling in this game gets very strange all of a sudden. Encouragement to go adventuring gets very weird. The base motivation behind adventures get complicated. Though maybe I can remove the Pathfinder from Kingmaker and War of the Righteous, as well as double down on a lot of the Border Princes aspects. Adventure comes to you sometimes. Of course, this is all debating, musing, and tweaking a bubble in my mind. For now, at least. If you know anything I could use here, or anything inspired by this, then tell me. I feel like I'm cooking, but I don't know if it's with gasoline or methamphetamine. My name is Notepad Anon, and this was Musing of the Impossible Quest. If you like what I do here, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you to my ever-loyal retinue for this continued funding of my robber barony. Godspeed and good luck.
This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far.